Good morning. I'm so glad you're here. It's Sunday morning. I'm in Montana. It's snowstorming outside, but it's spring in other parts of the country. So I'm pretty excited for the rest of you. It's just more winter here in Montana. First and foremost, some of you are brand new to watching me, even though I've been doing this since 2014 on videos, right? Yeah, yeah. It's been a long time. And what I would want you to know is that I'm a historian. So, my particular area of history is Renaissance, Reformation, and the World War Twos or World Wars One and Two. I'm an educator. Used to be a high school teacher and a trainer and now a coach. I've been in the therapeutic industry since '95, working specifically with kids that have been placed in program by their parents because they weren't working in the family system, right? Which was my passion, is to work with those kind of parents and kids and sort of the family dynamic, right? And let's see, what's the last one? Is that I'm a metaphysician. I've been to two different mystery schools. I work with esoteric wisdoms. I work specifically with energy and sensitivities and our energetic reactivities. So when you put all these together and we're looking at the solar flares, and I want to really focus today on baby boomers. Number one, because I'm a baby boomer, my birthday's coming up. But I'm noticing that there's a lot of us in this age group, and there's a lot of us who are being raised by parents who are in this age group, right? So understanding this is going to be really important. So when we look at family lineage, ancestral patterns of energy, whether it's high levels of sensitivity, whether it is self-medicating and reactions to environments, people, and places and things around them, that these are passed on from family to family. They are passed on through the mother in utero to the child. They're passed on between mom and dad in the familial setting for the first 2 years, and they continue to replicate. So whether we are conscious or unconscious of this, we have lineages that go through, I'm going to say dad on the right side, right? And mom on the left side. And that each of these lineages have um, parents and grandparents on each side and grandparents on each side. So the ancestral feed is real intense by the time it gets to you. And so what's happening is that those who were born in the post World War II, 1945 to 1965 is, or 64, is technically the age of the baby boomer. What I'm looking at is that that is a time period in our history where we pulled out of World War II. We had an enormous war machine going. We had developed communication tools, media tools, factories and reproduction or in production. We put an emphasis on education and what was important to learn. We need accountants, we need engineers, we need people who can really make this war effort go forward into our culture. And the piece that fell into place this week for me was just how intense that post-war machine went into controlling a rigid set of what it's like to be an American, what it's like to be a Western culture, what's it like to be a human in our world. And because I'm American, I'm going to look at it from that lens and also notice that there were replications and similarities in other parts of the world. So I apologize from my solo perspective, right? But here in the US, what happened is that we sort of locked into, this is what a nuclear family looks like. This is what the role of a father looks like. This is what the role of a mother looks like. This is how we're going to implement and support the patriarchy. This is how we're going to emphasize education. This is what a work value is. This is what citizenship looks like. These are the responsibilities you have as a citizen. And everything was documented by this clinical site, this psychologist, this doctor, this, think of all the medical books. This is what we think you should do with your child. This is what we think you should do in your marriage. And so what happened is it was cranked in really, really tight. And there was no room for any movement. And those who were born closer to 45 to 55 were really in the father knows best, the the rigid roles of this is what a boy is, and this is what a boy wears, this is what a boy says, this is how they act, this is what a girl wears, this is what a girl says, this is how she acts. And those roles were very tightly set by family, by religion, by community, by politics. They were very rigidly set for those. From 55 to 65, they were having a harder time because there were more of us coming in who I would say are creatives. And this was not conducive to somebody who thought outside the box. So what was it? I have all of these, I have all of these cards. So from the Sacred Rebels, they weren't conducive to someone who was going beyond normal, right? And so what happened was creatives were shamed and judged, and they were made to feel guilty, and they were denied their natural desires, their natural skill sets. And, I was looking at Alana Fairchild, who did this Sacred Rebels book, and she said it was really tricky and complicated because the relationship, you had to develop a relationship between what the outer world was telling you could and couldn't do, and the yearnings of your heart. And so there's this sort of shutdown that comes down through the lineage of when I come up against something that doesn't work for me, I either have the courage to buck it all and get out there, which very few of us had, maybe 5, 10%, maximum 20%. The rest sort of succumb. They subdued themselves into that rigid role and they replicated it. Okay, so when we are looking at a boomer, what we're looking at is someone who, in every form, whether it was television shows, commercials, family dinners, political rallies, movies that they went to, everything was shrinking this role into a very one-dimensional person. And so when we are looking at someone my age, or looking at parents that you may have for your children at this time, or millennials who are like boomer, right? What they're not seeing is just how tight that vice that kept everybody in place was really there. And so the ability to, sort of shirk that and open that is up. Now, this is where the solar flares come in, because solar flares come through the central sun, they come through our sun, and they are light codes. They are ascension light codes, they are upgrades, they are energetic waves, they are, what do we want to say, ultraviolet frequencies. Depending on what approach you take, they can be seen from a lot of different ways. However, they are beaming through the sun onto us, and then they come up in a C class or an M class, or this huge X2 class we just had on Friday. And so when they hit our bodies, they stir up those parts of us that are locked tight in a vice, that are hitting the densities and the conditionings and the patterns that have been holding us as humans in place for decades, for centuries, even for millennia, because these patterns kept repeating themselves from our parents down to us, and then down into our children, and down into our grandchildren. And this has been replicated, right? So they're hitting our densities and they're making us uncomfortable. And it's noticeable. So whether it's headaches, ringing in the ears, whether it's heart palpitations, whether it's sore joints and immobility, what we're seeing is an entire generation or two or three in a lot of pain because those densities have been locked in so tight. I hope this makes sense. The deeper and more constricted the patterns and control were for the baby boomers, the more pain they're going to experience during the solar flares, unless they have been doing their own work, freeing themselves from these familial patterns, working on energy, learning how to move their body and address it with supplements and magnesiums and things that work. What I've noticed is that someone within my age group, and I'm on the younger side of the baby boomers, is that there's a lot of medication, a lot of hip and knee and shoulders and surgeries, replacements. There's a lot of arthritis. There's a lot of diabetes and heart disease. And so this is what happens when we're super constricted and we've had no room to grow. It's like we're dying from the inside out, right? So when you add on to this post World War II, this is where the historical nerd in me is just gonna like really have a good time. Is that Disney was a World War II, pre-World War II, actually, defense company making training films and were completely funded through the war effort. So when post World War II came along, they had the ability to turn all of this filmmaking skill, the studios and the work into very structured messaging that was delivered intentionally post World War II, because don't forget we also had enormous psychology and research showing how to um, hypnotize MK Ultra, shape the brain and the patterning. Okay, so that went into television, that went into movies, went into everything that came out of Hollywood. It went into our music, it went into our lyrics, and it was population shaping and holding, trying to hold and creating the hold and holding that vice grip in place. And the movie that comes to mind all the time for me is the Truman Show. Is what happens when there's this perfect little community that seems like that's the world that it is, and then Truman, Jim Carrey, finds a leak in it and realizes that it's false and nobody is playing the roles that they're supposed to, right? So when we look at Hollywood, when we look at our news, when we look at our news networks, our programs, everything that we've been given has been holding these generations tight. So the more we expose ourselves to it, the less freedoms we have. Okay. So, what we're really looking at is finding ways to use these flares to release old patterns of behavior, to let go of relationships that no longer serve us, to relinquish control. However, we do that, to surrender into the flow, right? To start a journey and allow something different to happen. This is the number 12. Every journey starts with a single step. Again, on the sacred rebels. Okay, what we're looking at is trusting ourselves. So with this solar flare, it's activating our nervous systems. It's activating our energy management, Chiron, which is why I study Chiron as much as I do, and I offer it for coaching. And our densities are showing us where we're supposed to go, how we're supposed to loosen, how we're supposed to dissolve, break, crack open, identify, release these densities. So I have 6 tips for you, and I'm going to go through them. And if you have any questions, by all means, drop a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. Ask questions. You can also, down in the description, that you can get a hold of me through my website and you can ask me directly. Okay. Also, like and subscribe this and pass this around to anyone you know as a baby boomer and see if it lands, right? And I'm going to say one thing before I get going, that baby boomer Gen X, because the older Gen X and the older Gen X were raised by the more intense baby boomers. So they're going to be carrying some of this in themselves. So this isn't just a single generation issue. This is me focusing on boomers first and then moving down over the next weeks into how it affects different generations. So we're going to start here with boomers. Tip number 1. You have to do your own work, right? So that's not the tip. I got off. I just looked at this for a second. You got to do your own work, because what you're doing is you're looking at both sides of the family and you got to figure out where this is affecting you. So tip number 1 is to track the flares. Track them. When you feel something in your body, when you notice that there's a symptom, when your ears start to ring, when you feel off, when the world feels really dense all of a sudden, go check the solar activity and start to connect. Solar activity, this is how I feel. So all we're doing is taking 2 points and starting to make sense. This. When this happens, I notice this. Okay, number 2. Notice and observe the thoughts that you're having, the things that come up through your mind, the memories, the stories, the people, places, and things that show up, because you're going to find out that it's you or your parent or your grandparent or your great grandparent, because these things are coming through you, and that there's a perspective, there's an action, there's a reaction to whatever that is. And so what we're noticing is that it's hitting something that is lineal within our family. So notice what stories come up. Number 3, follow the thread, right, of that lineage. without unpacking the story. You don't have to know why mom was this, or why grandma was this, or why great grandma was this. Just notice that you can track them. So an example would be, you're dealing with alcoholism in your family background, right? And you may not, you may be okay with that, but your brother or sister or sibling may not. They may be struggling with addiction. You notice that your parent has different forms of addiction. You may notice that in order for a parent to have addiction, there's trauma there, which means that it came from the grandparents. And if the grandparents had it there, then they had trauma and it came through that. So start to notice, without unpacking, that this goes up. You can even go, from my dad's side of the family, I have this, and this. And from my mom's side of the family, I have this, and this, right? So you're starting to follow the threads, and actively change the people, places, and things that keep you holding that string. So if you're in a repetitive loop over and over again with anger or bitterness, or think of the things that can come up through this lineage, right? And my suggestion is to go big, look at the cause and effect, and to use your courage to see it and to feel it and go, oh, that's what that is. That's this thread coming through my family line. So once you found the thread, number 4, trust it. Trust it and let it go. Put it down. Do what you need to do to stop carrying it in your system. I'm not going to hold on to the addiction model. I'm going to do my own work on my own trauma, and I'm going to stop it here with me. And I'm not going to pass this any longer on to my children or my grandchildren, right? So you actively change, again, the people, places, and things that hold on to this pattern. So this is where that courage comes in, which is sometimes you have to quit jobs. Sometimes you have to quit marriages. Sometimes you have to quit families. Sometimes you have to quit where you live, because these are holding that vice grip in place, and you can't do that. So what you do is you start to go against the grain, right? You start to go against the grain of what, and you hold this big, bold vision that there's something else out there. Number 5, you change you. You can't change the whole family system. You can just change you. You put it down. You refuse to return to it. You create your own, capturing the language, the posturing, the pattern, the thinking of what happens when you get into that. And then you start to change the way you talk and the way you act to yourself, to your partner, to your kids, to your grandkids, to your tribe, to your people. Because and I've had to do this since 2010, which is, this isn't working for me, so this is how I'm changing. And many of you have watched me more from this very educational, analytical sort of coaching on parent coaching into this esoteric, energetic coaching, because that's what works for me. Number 6 is that you hold compassion for yourself, for everybody going through this, and you celebrate the courage that it takes to get out of this programming, because this is huge. When we are going beyond normal, right, and we are going against the grain, it takes a tremendous amount of courage. So I applaud you, applaud yourself, hold compassion. And if you're curious about how to do this, this is what I know how to do. Though a lot of that is here in the Indigo Assignment as to what it's about. And there's just resources there. So reach out. Have a great Sunday. It's a new moon tonight at midnight, excuse me. And so all of this through Pisces is going to keep asking us to sort of, flow and float and breathe and let go, and sort of see what happens when I'm on a little rolly ball. So you can see how the Pisces can sway like water, right? Is that you're going to break open these controls and you're going to start loosening them. So enjoy it, and expect big stuff this month. Take care. Bye-bye.